Hello, everybody! Welcome to another episode of All Caps. I'm Isaac Anderson, author of The Garden Maze and Song of Bones. I'm joined by Tim McKay, author of The Fall of Selvandrea, and our very, very special guest is Darran Handshaw, author of The Engineer and The Heart of Darkness Redemption. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so glad to have you here, Darran. I was laughing because right before we were talking about characters with that awesome handlebar mustache you used to have, and I was so tempted to call you Dewey when we got on. Just we figured out. Yeah, we were trying to think. So anyone in the chat, I'm going to throw.
I haven't gotten that as a lookalike before. That's a first.
Yeah, well, a little more hair. Dewey definitely has a little more hair.
I got Matthew McConaughey from Reign of Fire.
Yeah, that's funny.
I've got a lot. I usually have to freshly shave my head to 0, right? So
that's so good. I think I was having a debate with someone just the other day about the futility of Matthew McConaughey jumping off the tower at the end with his axe, which I still think is pretty darn bad. If you're gonna go, that's a way to go, right?
Yeah. I think he won. Didn't he win against the dragon?
Is that how that story ends?
I think the dragon did eat him.
Oh, the dragon definitely snatched him out of the air.
Other people, I think, won the day. I think they were able to kill it.
At some point.
There's a scene in my second novel that's somewhat similar to that in The Dark Heart of Redemption.
Well, let's get into those novels. So your first book is called The Engineer, and you are an engineer.
I am an engineer. That's true.
So is this book about you?
It is not about me, but it's about something that I love. So it's actually a true story, which is weird. It's the true story of how I met my wife in a text-based role-playing game that she created called Redemption Mush.
Interesting.
Wow.
So there used to, before there were MMOs, and actually there still are, games called Muds and Mushes that it's all text-based gameplay. Yep. So you create a character, you fill out a character background. So the type of game that her game was no rolls, no dice rolls. It was all just I write what my character does. I stick within the bounds of what my character can do, and then she'll write, and then Isaac will write his character, and then Tim, you'll write yours. So and we'll kind of have an adventure together, right? So it was a lot of fun. So that's probably what kind of got me into writing more, because I'm not formally trained as a writer or anything. So I played a character on that game, and it was my first engineer character. And just the story that we played through was just so amazing that I had tried to write a book so many times, and not really gotten to it before. But when I saw that story and how it panned out, I was like, I got to write that into a novel. So
I feel like that's every nerd's dream love story right there.
Definitely,
pretty amazing.
So
how long have y'all been married?
It's been 10 years.
Wow! Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah,
10 years this winter. So.
And was it? I didn't see. I knew you had been in SPFBO all the way to semi-finalist. Was that the engineer? SPFBO twice. Wow.
Yeah, the engineer made it to semifinals. Dark Heart. I wrote it as a standalone because I've been so frustrated so many times with authors when they don't finish the series, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, even if I die or something, they're both standalone books. So I did enter it as a standalone novel, and I think just so many people had heard of The Engineer that they were like, we think we're going to cut it because we think it's too much of a sequel. So which is fine,
Yeah.
but I did give it a shot.
Fair, yeah, because that was my thought. I knew they didn't allow sequels.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They,
and then I also
do allow standalones. They do.
Yeah.
So if you say it's a standalone, but in the end it's up to the judges on if they think it's a standalone or not. I think what kind of killed me a little bit with that competition was I put a recap in the front, just a brief recap, right? So I think a lot of the judges were reading that and going, "Yeah, no."
Fair.
So yeah, I was in SPFBO and I was in I don't think there's
the one you can't pronounce, the SPS. No, I always miss.
Is it
self-published sci-fi competition, right?
Yeah.
Specific, I think we were supposed to.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be called specific, and that never caught on. So
yeah, I know. I think it's Mike Molman likes to call it Spacebo, which I think works.
Yeah. I think Spacebo caught on. Yeah. So the engineer was a quarter-finalist there, and again, Dark Heart was like similar. People,
nice.
yeah, nice try, buddy.
That's funny. Yeah. I love that idea though, because that's the thing. I was even talking to a few authors the other day. If you want to take a break from your main series, there's that pushback of no, finish what you've started.
Yeah.
Which, like you said, is just fair to readers. But as an author, sometimes you want to do something new. So,
yeah, my books are so long too. Like they're 225,000 words each.
Fair.
Like you might not want to read another one. You might want to go on to something else and then come back to So having a nice self-contained story where there might be hooks for something else, but it's a satisfying ending that wraps up a lot of the threads. I think that's a good goal to have these days. Sure. And especially with me, because I work full-time as an R&D engineer, so I'm writing one time a week, and that's it. That's all I have time for. So the first novel that you have on the screen took me 3 years, and then the second novel, I was the chief of my fire department too, so it took me 5 years to write it. So
wow,
man.
To be fair to my readers, you get a nice, if you're going to read one of those books, it has a nice ending.
So if you're doing that once a week, what does that writing session look like for you?
It does.
Is it several hours, or is it still just what time you can pull?
It's varied over the years. I try to get like a good 3 to 4 hour session once a week, where I'm sitting down and really cranking out a good amount of pages.
That's good.
Yeah. Sometimes, like if I'm inspired, I'll sit down with the laptop, and if I'm not distracted, I'll crank out a few extra pages here or there, or do some more work on the side. But I try to hold myself to being so busy. I have to do that once per week, and eventually I will have books.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right?
Slow, steady effort. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's a group on Twitter called Turtle Writers.
Yeah, and I like this. I hear the rule of thumb is a trilogy and 4 side stories. Yeah. That feels about right.
Yeah.
Total.
What's your current project?
I'm breaking the rule of thumb. I've got the duology, and then 22 stories that will come out soon.
22.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then I think it's 4 more novellas planned for that kind of collection.
Oh,
in
nice.
that world. But
So
again,
I think you had mentioned 2 book launches. So are those 22 split into 2 volumes, or how's that working?
Yes. So a lot of them are writing the first 2 novels. You come up with a lot of ideas. Oh, well, thank you. I guess I hit authorship in 2022 then.
Screw you, Bet Sauce. Joe, you little bastard.
Yeah, but he just finished an audiobook, so he's good.
And you know what? No, he's right. I undid myself. You know what? So I really have to put the pedal to the metal for my sequel now.
Well, you are a author, and now you're also a voice actor.
There we go. Yeah.
So you have to join. I think you have to join the union, right?
Yeah. Is that how that works?
Yeah.
That union.
Yep. Get a unionize.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, now I can offer to do crappy voiceovers for desperate ACX authors. No shade at all to ACX. I actually had a good experience, but yeah. Anyways, there's also anyone who's done who's held auditions for their book on ACX will tell you you get a lot of really great auditions, and then you get some really funny voices trying to do your book. Some of them are just beautifully entertaining.
It sounds like just a fun thing to do, to log in and just record someone's book in the weirdest voice you could achieve. Hello, I am reading your book now.
There was one that was honest. One of the ones I got that's about accurate, and I thought I must be being pranked.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
That's so accurate. And they have to do a quick description of their own voice. And so this person said, I have a raspy, but how did they describe it? They said it had a lovely range of highs and some lows and a raspy overtone. It was just high pitched nasally.
Nice and raspy.
Yeah.
You're going to love this.
It's going to be great, kid. Trust me. I'll make your characters come alive. They'll leap off the page, kid.
Would have been great on The Simpsons, but not so much for an audiobook. Yep. Did you? I didn't see on the Amazon page. Do you have audiobooks for either of yours?
I don't. No. I haven't sold enough copies to entice an audio or artist to work with me yet. So
fair.
Working on
it. Something you would do in the future?
Yeah. I've actually been considering maybe just recording a chapter at a time myself and just putting it up on YouTube.
Yeah,
that would be fun. Yeah.
So I might do that with the short story collection. Just read a short story and have it on YouTube, and then link the book.
Yeah, very fun.
So
yeah, there's a few authors. I'm trying to. I think Mike Molman did have one of his books completely. He did. I think he released them gradually. I don't know if it's still up.
The Druid one, right?
Yeah. And I thought that was actually a really good idea. I was almost tempted, but then I saw ACX requirements. I thought, okay, no, I'll back off. I'll let someone else do it. And then that fell through, so I just did it myself. So yeah. But so tell us more about these shorts. Well, actually, before we move on from the engineer, I have to ask you this, and then we'll go to short stories. But I want to know about the dagger, the engineer knife. I don't know the proper term for it. The one that I saw.
You posted something about some knife.
Yeah.
A knife? Okay.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it had a logo from your book on it.
Do you guys like Lego?
Oh, absolutely.
Man. Legos.
My whole childhood in a nutshell.
Yeah. Okay. So this is Acteon minifigure. So not quite what it looks like in the book, but this is as close as I could get to his halberd. So he's got it's basically a pole arm. So give you a background on Acteon. He's not a fighter. He's not very good at fighting, but in this kind of rough and tumble, like ruins of an ancient city left behind, and people are trying to survive in there. Everyone needs to know how to fight a little bit, and he's an engineer, so he's always solving problems. So he's like, hey, I'm not going to win in a sword fight or something like that. So he wants to keep people at a distance. So the halberd helps him keep people at a distance. But he also has a hook in the blade, so he could reach out and hook things that are far away. And he can use the pole arm as a lever. So he's got a wedge in the bottom of it, so he could lever things out of the way. So very often in the story, he's using that as a tool, probably more often than he uses it to fight.
Nice.
He's an engineer.
He is an engineer. Yeah. So I like to call him like a medieval MacGyver. So he's kind of like a cross between like a medieval MacGyver and an Archimedes. So he does invent things, but when he's on, I like putting him in situations where it's like he's kind of screwed, and he might be good at blocking. Yes. So
yeah,
I like to put him in situations where like he's totally screwed, and he's got to use anything that he has on him or around him to get out of the situation. And then just sit there. It's fun for me as an engineer to just sit there and be like, how's he going to get out of this? I can't give him anything new. I know what's on his kit, and I know what's around him in the scene. I need to figure out how's he going to survive. And
one thing I liked while I was reading, even just through the prologue, first seeing that halberd, I do like a good halberd, so that works for me. Now, the one you held up immediately reminded me of of Matt Cawthon's Shandari and Wheel of Time. So you already had me when someone has a good pole arm or
Yep.
halberd or something like that. But I find when you dive into a new sci-fi, especially, sometimes it's overwhelming on the world building. I like
Mhm.
that you gave us a strong flair of the medieval fantasy-ish sense right away too, because I find that easier to just ease into.
Yeah.
It was nice that way. There was that mix of action and world building. I thought it was a good blend.
Thanks. And the nice thing I think too about the sci-fi aspects of that universe is like, well, you can see it behind me with Dark Art of Redemption. There's all these
Mm,
high-tech elements around, but the characters don't know how any of it works.
yeah,
So you're kind of learning along with like Acteon. Acteon's trying to take an engineering scientific approach and figure out how everything works. Some
yeah,
people are taking the stuff and worshipping it, and there's other groups trying to destroy it because they think it's evil.
Hmm.
yeah. It's
So
it's it's like a step past. It didn't give me a dystopian vibe. It is in a dystopian context in a sense, but it seems to step past that in an maybe more optimistic. I don't know how to describe worlds like that. There are
It's
some
a happy
fantasy
dystopia.
settings.
it's
Sorry.
it's it's
It's a happy
definitely
dystopia.
yeah, it's definitely hopeful, but it's
Yeah.
it's it's not easy to survive in that world. So to give you a little background on that universe, so the city of Redemption, it's a city, um, was um, left abandoned. The people called the ancients now uh, just miraculously disappeared
Mm,
without a trace um, thousands of years ago. They don't know how long. Has it been hundreds of years? Has it been thousands of years? But now the city's fallen in disrepair. The people are gone, and then about 100 years before the story begins, some sort of portals open and just spat people out into the city in different areas, and the people didn't know how to speak the language in the city, and they didn't know what anything was, and they had a medieval tech understanding. So
mm,
they knew how to do things. They weren't completely bereft of knowledge. They had
yeah.
some knowledge, but all the artifacts left behind, they didn't know what they were.
Very
So
fun.
so
Yeah.
where did they come from is a big question. Why did that happen? And in the books, it touches on that a little bit. And then the short stories, I get to explore that a little bit more. So that was fun to be
Nice.
able to write that more. And I actually wrote a few short stories that are before the fall of the city.
Mm.
But
Oh,
yeah, to answer your question, it's not post-apocalyptic like a Mad Max, although there are Mad Max elements to it, which you could see probably in the prologue of the engineer,
yeah.
because there's areas of the city that are not secure, and there's you know bad people that will take advantage of you in those areas. But for the most part, there are civilizations that are eking out an existence throughout the city, and they're trying to survive. And
Nice.
so there is security in different spots. And
Mm.
the pyramid's a big one. And you can see, I think, up here beyond this,
Ah,
right
yeah.
behind me
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Travail, but this is the same pyramid that's on the cover of the Engineer.
Got it.
And that's what was in the game that we played. That was the neutral center of Redemption. So that was where everyone kind of hung out and met up and discussed politics and trade and stuff. And there was a order of arbiters that actually defended the neutrality there. So they'd
I
make sure
initially
people didn't bring their wars there and stuff.
I initially heard "made out" instead of "met up" the first time you said it there, and I
And
thought,
I
wow,
initially said that,
you
and
did meet your wife in this game.
and that was not what I meant to say. So,
So great. Oh man, that's still the best book origin story I've ever heard. So yeah,
oh, thank
gonna
you.
be
Yeah.
gonna be hard for anyone to top that going forward.
Yeah, so
Oh,
the engineer is actually, and I embellished a little bit, and I broadened the story in a sense, and obviously you have to you have to follow a story byline through. So
mm,
I wanted to make sure I follow that, but the um, the entirety of the engineer happened like like number of players played that out,
mm,
and then the Dark Heart of Redemption takes it beyond what had actually happened in the game. So
Right.
it
Yes.
nice.
started happening, and then we go into taking that further, which is fun.
What were some of the influences behind
Thanks,
the initial
Alex.
crumbs of the story?
It's my buddy Alex.
Welcome to the
Cheers,
show,
Alex.
Alex.
Yep.
You've made history on this
Yes.
episode 7 of All Caps.
Yep.
Special guest star Alex.
Alex and I have fought many fires together.
Awesome.
So
I want to
among other
ask you
things.
some questions about first responding stuff too.
Yeah.
Sure.
But what were some of the influences behind the engineer? Like any stories you took from, or like
But behind the character was, MacGyver, Archimedes,
Mm,
Hero of Alexandria. I don't know
mhm,
if you've
Okay.
heard of it. Historical figures. So a lot of polymaths that are dabbling in a lot of different fields.
Mm.
But then I wanted somebody that could be almost like an action, like take action and make immediate changes and stuff.
gotcha, yeah.
Right.
So does
So
that come from a lot of exploring of that history yourself on your own time?
yeah. So learning a lot about those different historical figures. I'm a big MacGyver fan, and
Mhm.
then a lot of like Alex is on. He could tell you a lot of times as an emergency service worker, we get on scene and it's and I've served as a fire chief, and you get on scene and it's always a different incident, and you have
Mhm,
to come up with a solution on the spot with stuff you have on the truck, right?
Mm.
So I love that. That's what I like about emergency services, and I got to kind of do that with the character of Acteon too. So there's a big inspiration there in what I wanted the character to do. I think one of the big inspirations behind Redemption, which was my wife's my wife's world that I've expanded on, is Stargate Atlantis was a big
Okay.
one. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
Stephen was mentioning the Narnian Telmarines, and I thought of that, but Stargate absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, far more appropriate for the context. That's fascinating. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steven, not John McClane, because you know I like my characters to have their boots and shoes on.
Yeah.
That bothered me that whole movie with them walking around barefoot.
Yeah, that's
It's
fair.
so
That's fair.
stressful.
Want to see him step on a tack or jagged staple at some point. It's not realistic
He
otherwise.
did he did step on glass, I think, in part of it, right?
Fair.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. His
Yeah,
Yeah.
feet get all cut up.
yeah, that was horrible.
Pulling the gun off of his back.
Yeah,
Oh, what
They
was?
they
I
really
think it
need
was
a
commute. Oh, sorry.
they really did need a moment where he steps on attack and he spends 5 minutes just going, oh, God.
yep.
Yeah. Yeah. A little more
Step,
realistic there.
stepping on attack is not fun. I've done
Yeah.
that.
One time.
Yep.
Yeah. Not good at all. Yeah. So tell us a bit more about the. Well, yeah. I want to get into your influences further. Like, yeah. Having fire chief and first responder experience, which is pretty amazing. And then so you're still doing first responding right now, correct? And then R and
Yes.
D engineering.
Yep. So that's I volunteer as a first responder, and then
Mm,
my paid job is I'm an R&D engineer. So I actually
fair.
I actually invent products for and come up with concepts for new products for a company, for a tech
Wow.
company.
Nice. Can you talk about that at all, or
A little bit stuff that I've done already. Yeah, sure.
Fair. Yeah.
okay?
So
What's your favorite thing you've made?
um so some of the stuff um goes further than others, right? A lot of my field, I work with data capture devices. So I work
Okay.
barcode scanners, RFID, stuff like that. Now, machine vision stuff.
Mm,
So a lot of optical, mechanics and things like that. Um, but one of the coolest inventions that I made, and I got to build it and test it, was something that mounts on your fire helmet with
mm.
thermal cameras that had a wide view of everything that was going on. And while you're doing a search and crawling around through a fire, it would show on a little HUD where, yeah, thumbtack protection. It would detect thumbtacks and it would tell you to move them out of the way before you continued, searching in a fire. Actually, you could just put a magnet on an electromagnet on the front of it and just connect them all. Um, But yeah, it would tell you on the HUD like where the hot spots were, so you could go
Nice.
straight to the fire. And since it had a field of view that looked all around you, you wouldn't pass a hot spot because you don't want to pass a hot spot in a fire. You don't want the
Mhm.
fire behind you as you're advancing, right? So
Mm.
So we actually built that, and I got to test it out in 2 actual fires, and one training fire and 1 actual fire, and it worked.
Wow.
So that was fun. But then the company didn't build it, right? So,
I guess
but it was
that's
fun. It was fun to build. Yeah.
always the risk. Well, I mean, you're still getting paid for it, but
Right.
yeah. Oh, that's on the one hand disappointing after having gotten to test it in real life too. But I
Yep.
mean,
We
that's
were,
very
we, we
cool.
were
That's
this
very
close to
cool.
cyberpunk firemen.
Yeah.
We were,
No,
yeah,
I did it. It was just with a prototype, so it was just me.
yeah.
Okay.
So
You are
you
one of
are the
the you're
cyberpunk.
the
He
the
is
Yeah.
the
last cyberpunk fireman.
Yeah.
first and last, the
I should
protagonist.
I should boot that thing up and put it on my helmet again.
Come onto one of these shows sometime with just wearing
Yeah.
your thermal helmet. That's
Awesome.
awesome. And now because of Steve, well, because of what you said to Steven, now I'm just picturing the what's that horror movie with the guy with all the spikes coming out of his head? You know the one I'm talking about. That's gonna bug me now.
Spikes coming up his head.
Yeah, like they're not tacks, obviously. They're like
Oh,
nails.
the Hellraiser guy.
Yeah, yeah. Now I'm just picturing
That
you as
guy.
Hellraiser. That's exactly that. It's
Really
Hellraiser.
really looked less like that.
Yeah, I
What if
imagine
firefighters just looked like Hellraiser? That was just what they wore.
that'd be a
Yeah.
nice deterrent. No one would ever start a fire again.
Yeah. So I teach kids fire prevention too, and that probably wouldn't go well.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of the firemen.
Oh gosh.
I've got a bunch of spikes sticking out of my head.
Ah, Pinhead. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Oh man. Yeah. For engineering, how has that influenced? I mean, both, but specifically, yeah, the engineering side. Since the book itself is even called The Engineer, how has being an engineer and that creative side of things influenced your writing?
I guess in 2 ways. So I like writing about characters that will solve the problem not by fighting, right? I mean, thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
So I like when y- they you a character can invent their way out of a problem instead of just using a gun or a sword or something like that. There's just too much of that in sci-fi and
Mm,
fantasy. So not that I don't have a plethora of battle scenes and stuff in my books, but I like showing how would somebody with a different skill set survive those big battles, not by fighting, and maybe augment the battle with inventions instead of just you know follow me into battle. So I really like that. So my experience as an engineer, I guess, plays into that, and wanting to kind of expand into lots of disciplines of engineering too,
mm,
because I'm more looking at little electronics devices, right, in my
fair.
job. But Acteon gets to, like, at one point he's working on a project in the engineer where he's asked if he could topple a building, right?
Mm,
Hmm.
So it's one of the old buildings, and he actually comes up with the idea. Well, if I topple it, I could use it as a barrier to protect an area.
mm,
So he's looking to do that. We should get to Steven's question at some point, but I just want to finish this. That's a good
yeah,
question.
yeah.
Um, so the other way that it influenced me a lot is the process of engineering and coming up with a product, and coming up with a rough concept and then refining it and refining it and refining it and then releasing it, and
Mm,
deciding, even if it's not perfect, it has to release at some point or else it's never going to
Hmm.
yeah.
release. It's so similar to writing a story.
I was
It's
gonna
like
say true of books, right?
it's
That's
like
how
the
all of us
same
authors
thing.
feel. Yeah,
Yeah. It's like the
yep.
invention process is kind of like, you're coming up with a plot concept, you're doing the outline, right? And then we do detailed design and engineering, and that's like when you're writing the story, you
Mm,
know. And then the more you write of the story, it's both of them are systems. So the more you write of the story, the less flexibility you have, or
mm,
else you'll break it, right? So
yeah,
you'll
True.
break your story if you're not thinking through all of the details, or you'll break your product, right? And it won't work.
mm,
So there's, the further along you get, there's less flexibility in where you can go, right?
yeah, yeah,
And you
absolutely.
and you see that with your characters and your worlds and stuff like that. And you're
Yeah.
not going to hand the character a solution, because the reader's going to be like, "What are you doing?" You know,
Yeah,
they'll see right through that. So you really have to think about, well, how does everything kind of mesh together to hit your conclusion?
Yeah, you need that irreducible complexity.
Yep.
Mm.
And then editing and beta readers and stuff like that is all kind of like almost the engineering testing. Like we're dropping the products on the ground to see if they break. It's
Yep.
kind of like the dropping the products on the readers to see if the readers break, right? Or something like that.
Yep.
So, and then you want to edit it to a certain point. It can't be completely perfect. Nothing is. Hey, Glenn.
Howdy, Glenn.
It's
Glenn
Glenn
made
double
it.
in.
Did he get the signature from Lord Grimdark?
That's the question.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, you got to see Joe Abercrombie today, right? Glenn? Yeah, let us know in the chat. That's still pretty wild.
Did he scratch you?
Hopefully he's not included in the story. I wouldn't want to be in a Grimdark story.
I'm somewhere in the description of not so much inventing your way out of problems and battles and traditional fantasy and sci-fi scenes, but I was immediately picturing Home Alone meets
Oh yeah,
post-apocalyptic sci-fi world, and I was like, yes, I'm for it. I'm all
yeah,
for it.
yeah. Because Kevin McAllister, right, was quite the little engineer when he
Yep,
fought all those
exactly.
guys, right?
Yep. Yeah, okay, so that's a big yes from Glenn. That's so
Yeah,
cool. That's
he
very
had
He
a
cool.
met
successful
baby
evening.
Stephen King.
Yeah.
He
And
chill.
got here in time to join us
Yeah, that's
with time
impressive,
to
Glenn.
spare. Nice.
Yeah. Tell us a bit more about these short stories then. So did you say it sounded like some? I'm curious. Are all of them related to the Action world,
They-
or
They're all in the Redemption universe. Yep.
okay?
Okay.
So one collection is basically just a lot of stories that I wanted to write as I was writing the first book. Right.
Mm,
Hmm.
There's a lot of side stories that are really awesome, but they don't fit in a book.
mm,
So the Artificer of Pain, nice. So wanting to tell those stories and kind of wrap up some of the loose ends for the readers. I like putting little threads in there everywhere for readers to pick up on that relate to, between the first and second book or between future short story ideas.
mm,
So going there and giving readers more answers about, well, what the heck happened here, right?
yeah.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and some more insight into that and different characters, I think was really nice to do, especially post Dark Heart of Redemption. So I wanted to write and follow up on some characters and see what they were doing and what were their next adventures. So I'm really excited to share that. I think some people that loved some of the characters in Engineer and Dark Heart are really going to like reading those short stories
Mm,
and seeing what happens and also seeing some of the new characters I came up with. Some of them
Nice.
again before the fall of the city,
fair. Yeah.
but is still kind of interwoven with the whole story. So why did certain things happen the way they did?
What's the average length or the length overall even of each collection?
I think that one is going to be coming later. That I think it was like 108,000 words, so it's
Okay. Yep.
significant. But
Yeah.
it's 11 stories, and then I have um, the other collections again 11 stories. I seem very symmetrical when I do things because I like the novels. It
Good to hear.
wasn't even intended. I didn't try to do it, but they were the same exact word count length, which was weird.
That's
Wow.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like so the books are like the same thickness,
Mm,
They're perfect.
which is
yeah.
satisfying. So I'll have that, with the short story collections too, because I think the other one's like 118,000 words.
Okay. Yeah.
So that one's a little different. I wanted to take Actaeon and I paired him with an arbiter in the pyramid, right?
Mm,
And that arbiter is kind of like the Sherlock Holmes of pyramid, if you will.
okay.
And Sherlock Holmes was kind of this. He was like a Mary Sue character, right?
Mm, yeah.
Um,
Always
so
right.
so he's the Mary Sue of like investigative, like kind of like you'd expect from Sherlock Holmes, and then Actaeon is kind of that for the tech stuff. So
Okay.
um, and now he's only grabbing um Actaeon. So this new Night Arbiter, a Night Investigator character is named Aethelgard, and
Mm,
he grabs Actaeon just when he has a tech mystery that he can't figure out, and he needs an engineer for. So they're
huh,
all sci-fi tech mysteries um, that these two guys get together and try to solve.
that's
Interesting.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's very
so
fun.
so all of them, and there's they all are kind of standalone, but then there's a lot of through lines with you know, you see how their relationship develops as they continue solving mysteries together, and they also have a kind of nemesis that they have to fight through several of the short stories. That's a combination of you know, Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes,
Yeah.
but also Murdoch from MacGyver, right? So it's almost
Okay.
like
Yeah.
meshed together. So you know, and I don't know if do you remember too much about MacGyver?
Been a
I
while.
know we died laughing when the guy swings down. He's like in a cave. He swings. He goes, MacGyver, and like he immediately gets shot. Or he falls. He's like, ah! He falls down. We it was supposed to be serious, but we died laughing.
That was probably Murdoch,
I
if
think
I
it
remember
was. It was
correctly.
Sounds right.
the
Yeah,
MacGyver was
Yeah.
like, he keeps coming back. He's not dead. He keeps
yeah,
coming back.
yeah. He kept MacGyver like killed him every time, and then he would come back.
Mm.
So would I write shorts for those and publish via other avenues?
Yeah.
Like
What made you go indie?
full
That'd be
control over the story, honestly.
Right.
Mm.
Full control over the story. When I was doing the research on it, it was like, and this was I was doing the research on it back in 2015, 2016 when I was writing my first novel, trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I was done with it.
Mhm.
And even then, it was like, well, we expect you to have a social media following,
Yeah.
and you're gonna we're you know, we're not gonna do much of the advertising for you. You're gonna do it. It's like, well, guys, that's what I'm not good at. So
Yeah. Where's the deal?
like
Like,
you're
what are you
gonna
good for?
yeah, like that's
Yeah.
not good. And we're gonna tell you what kind of cover to have, and it's gonna, you know, your character's not gonna look like your characters. They're gonna look really weird. Um,
Yeah.
so, um, and you know, we're gonna have you change all these things in your story. And the engineer to me was like, no, you're not touching that story
Yeah.
because it was a true story. So it's like,
Mm.
you're gonna tell me now, okay, these characters can't do this. And it's like, well, that's what I want to get out of this story.
Yeah.
So then I kind of just stuck to it, and it seemed like the benefit you got out of trad got worse as time went on
Yeah.
after 2015. It was like, you know, so it was like every year I'd hear people talking about, oh, they wanted you to do this, and oh, they pulled back because I didn't sell enough books, and you know, they expected me to repay whatever they paid. I was like, what is going on here? Like, this just doesn't seem like something I want to be involved in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think it might be more like I would be open to that if they wanted to pick up my series, kind of like they did with Josiah Bancroft with Senlin. Um,
mm,
I'd be like, okay, fine, you know, I would consider that. But at that point, you're kind of established, and they're not going to muck with your story, right?
yeah.
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 That was a big thing for me, creative control.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Coming in as a new author, and they're expecting you to do everything and maintain that control. And I think for me, the other consideration is the timeline. There's already a long enough
Right.
timeline between writing and editing and beta feedback, as you talked about.
Yeah. And
And
now
now
I'm going to do, you know, for my last book, 5 years writing the story. And how much longer am I going to wait to see it come out? It's like,
yeah,
I'd like to see it just come out.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you talk to some authors who their publishing schedule is 5 years later and it's already edited by the publisher. Like
Right.
there's the only reason you're waiting is because it's convenient to them.
Yeah.
That's like
It's at
why.
the right time for the release. Yeah.
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 And now maybe some of them are right. They've projected correctly when the
Definitely.
market is going to be favorable. But I have to admit, I'm increasingly skeptical about their knowledge of what's coming in the industry. I
Yeah.
think they ride the waves as much as we do.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah. But for
Wanna go
something shorter, like a short story, is that the sort of thing you would?
So I actually had all these lists of anthologies, like the sci-fi anthologies that, you know, are almost around. Some of them were around since like the 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
Um, while I started writing these in 2022, um, and I was like, as I write these, I'm going to edit a few and I'm going to submit it to those big short story collections. And then AI came out, and it was like,
Mm,
Mm,
we can't take more submissions. We're closed for submissions. We're closed for
right.
submissions. We're closed. So that was
mm,
happening, and I've noticed some of them. I guess they figured out how to deal with the AI slop that's flooding their submissions.
yeah.
Um, and now it's opening back up again. But now I'm like, well, if I submit the short story that I want to be part of my collection, they want to be first to publish, and now I have to withhold it from my collection. So it's almost like I'm just going to release it. So
Yeah.
would I consider writing a short story for those? Absolutely. If I want to, yes, please send your pick with Richard Dean Anderson and Murdoch, Glenn. So yeah, that's kind of, I want it to be published in some of those, and I would consider writing other short stories for those. Absolutely.
Another
What's it like
question. Oh, sorry.
What's it like taking a break from these big old books and writing something small?
It's really nice because like even as an R&D engineer, the product timelines are usually a year to a year and a half.
Mhm.
So my book timeline is insane, like 3 years to 5 years so far.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to just like be done with something every month or two. I'm finishing a short story, which is really just satisfying. So I've enjoyed the process. I think I'm going to miss it because I want to get into writing at least a novella again.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm going to miss not writing the end every couple of months. Right?
Yeah, that's got to be. I'm tempted. I'm tempted
Yeah.
once I finish my sequel to give some short story writing a try. Now,
The other
something we talked about this before coming on, but I'm curious to hear maybe a little more because I posed a question to some folks on X and got some blowback because I consider a lot of the skills between the two transferable, but for sure there are different challenges between writing a novel and writing a short story. So, what's your experience like been there, just hopping between the two?
Well, let me get to that in a second. I just want to say one more thing about why I switched to short stories.
Mm,
When I came out with The Engineer, I had a lot of readers. I think I sold almost 1,000 copies, if not 1,000. And
wow.
then Dark Heart was like almost like very little, like maybe 100.
Oof, yeah.
And I asked a lot of people, hey, did you hate this? And a lot of people were just like, no, it's just really long. And I was like, but it's not longer than the other novel that you read. They were like, yeah, it's just long. So I think there's been a lot of attention. There's a lot of these, people don't have the same time to read. People don't have, maybe the interest in picking up such a long story.
Yeah.
And then also, they're doing a lot of these reading challenges where
Mm,
my huge book counts as much as a small book, right?
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So uh, I was kind of convinced after hearing so much feedback on that, like, yeah, I bought your book, but I'll get to it one day, but it's just too long. And I was like, let me write some shorter stuff so that people have more things to consume. So that said, I guess what is different about the two? So yes, Gabriel writes short stories is more challenging. I would say probably because you have to make sure, and I've published two bulky books, right?
Mm,
I didn't have to be concise. They're 225,000 words.
yeah.
I did try to make sure everything was pertinent, right? But I'm
Yeah.
trying to stick to with the short stories, the ballpark of 10,000 words, right?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
each. And some of them, obviously, if the story demanded it, I went over to, so I'm probably between like 7,000 and 15,000 words with all these
Okay.
short stories.
Yeah.
But the thing you have to do with those is just make sure everything's wrapped up very quickly and concisely. You have to throw the person into the world and make the world understandable, at least for them to read the story quick, very quick.
Yeah.
So it's even more of a sci-fi fantasy challenge because now you're writing in an original world. Um, so part of your 10,000 words goes toward that,
Yeah.
towards kind of establishing the setting a little bit for the reader. So doing that in a concise way and sticking to concise, just the plot, um, and even things that you'd normally write because they're fun, and maybe just kind of cutting to the next important thing, right? It's really something that you got to put some effort into. That said, I think writing a short story, I'm going to be a better writer when I write a book again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I do see that, like, advice: write a bunch of short stories and you'll be a better novelist. I see that you'll be a
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
concise novelist. But I do think there's some things in a novel that are satisfying. And one thing, like, my wife writes too, and she's actually got sci-fi book coming out that she's working on.
Oh,
But we one of the things we talked about was not having downtime, especially in some of these epics. And you see that in the movies a lot. It's just action
mm,
scene to action scene to action scene, and you don't get a chance to breathe and get to know the characters at all. And that's where I think novels really shine, is just getting to know the character and really establishing the norm for them before the norm gets disrupted, right?
yeah, fair.
So there's a little bit of that to that medium.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting, you know, it's interesting that for you the experience hit or where you saw the attention span drop off the most was with the sequel, because I do see that a lot. A
Yeah.
lot of authors who publish, really strong epics, and then the sequel hits, and no matter how well the first one did, I mean, there was even an author on X just yesterday, I think, essentially announcing he's taking a step back, probably permanently. It sounded like, and precisely because of this, I think his first novel
Yeah.
was longer, did exceptionally well. Second novel, barely anyone picking it up.
Yeah.
And I mean, the irony is, I relate. And my first novel, about 5,000, or sorry, 5,540 pages. So not much. I mean, a little bit shorter than yours, but still
Mhm.
lengthy.
Yeah.
It's over the Mike Mullman 500 bar.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
a door chalk.
it's a door. Yeah,
Yeah,
and yet
yeah.
my
We
current
use we
my
use them
current
as door chalks in the fire
yeah,
department. We have them on our helmet, and we just stick
yeah,
them in doors.
exactly. There you go. You need to, one of your next inventions needs to be a book holder on your helmet too. That's so bad. But yeah, like my current book on my TBR is God's Blood Tragedy by Bill Adams. It's I think a little over 600 words, or sorry, 600 pages. And that I read through the whole Wheel of Time series, and I forget how long, but it was some ridiculously short amount of time. And this book is really good, and it's still taking me an age to get through. It's almost
Mhm.
embarrassing. So I get it. And I mean, I can read my own
Yeah.
book overnight, but when it comes to casual reading, it's getting harder and harder to carve out the time and to keep your attention on it.
Yeah, especially
Uh,
I think as you get older, you get involved in more things. Like, I have
yeah.
an 8-year-old at home, so I'm
Mm,
very busy with parenting, and,
yeah.
so I used to read a ton of stuff, and now I'm like, "Okay, let's see
Yeah.
what I can get through, and how many things
Yeah.
I can get through," right? Um,
Yeah.
and I'm really looking for books that I know I'm kinda really gonna enjoy, right? So,
Yeah. It's
I
nice
w
to have both available. So,
yeah.
I think I like that I'm seeing a lot of authors do both. And I think that's a really good strategy.
Yeah, I think it's nice too, because like, I like doing sales in person, and
Mm,
uh, I get a lot of people that go to my booth and they read the back of the book and they're like, "This sounds awesome, but it's too long. I'm not gonna
ah,
read it." So I wanna be like, "Well, read the short stories.
yeah.
Just read one short story at a time whenever you want, and you're good to go." So I think that will kind of broaden my, um, amount of people that I can really, sell
Yeah.
books to, right?
Yeah.
So I
And you're
recommend.
hooking them
Yeah.
you're hooking them on that world too, so ideally,
Yeah,
eventually
and maybe some of them will go and say, "Well, I love this world so much, I need to read the novel now." Yeah,
yeah,
right. So
see what it's all about.
that would be cool.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to go back to, the, um I wanted to go back to the fight questions. How do you write
Yes.
fight scenes?
Yeah,
I
let
thought
me
that was
Yeah,
a
yeah, the
great
fight
question.
scenes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I love, like, a lot of people tout Dune. I liked Dune, right?
yeah.
That was Frank Herbert skipped fight scenes, and it was
Mm,
really disappointing. I love fight scenes.
yeah.
I love battle scenes. And he built to them too, right? And then skipped it. It was like, ah, even like Paul getting on the sandworm and the build up to it, and he's about to do it, and then it's like his mother's drinking tea, and then we'll skip to after it happened. Like, no, come on, just write it. Just
Yeah.
it'll be okay. Like, so I'm big on battle scenes. I love writing battle scenes. Um, it's a lot of battle scenes are very traumatic. I think I've seen a lot of bad things in the fire service. There's
Mm,
no getting around it. They're traumatic. People are dying around you. It's
yeah.
horrible. If you've
Mhm.
read if you've read stories about, World War II stories and things like that, it's quite awful. So I didn't want to beat around the bush. Dark Heart of Redemption has a lot of that.
Mm,
And although it's a hopeful sci-fi story, it has some brutal battle scenes.
Yeah.
That they don't treat war with kid gloves, right? It's pretty horrible. But that said, too, like I thought one of the I thought one of the scenes that was very well done, like if you relate to different movies and stuff like that. There was a scene in Game of Thrones where Kit Harington, Jon Snow, was in this battle, and there's just all these horses crashing around him, and I think he falls down. I don't know if it was him or somebody else. He falls down, and it's just a blur. You don't see what's going on. It's just people smashing into each other. So I liked that approach. You don't see all of the troop movements going on and everything unless you're a battlefield commander standing up on a hill, right?
Yeah.
So unless you're that guy, if you're down in the trenches fighting the war, you're seeing very limited things going on. You might be trying to rally the people that are close to you, and it could be complete chaos, mayhem, and confusion. So I like to write that. And then the other thing I see in battle scenes that are poorly written is the pacing. It's I think the amount of words that you use and sentences to describe the character's actions should be kind of on par with the speed of what's going on. Right. So I don't want to be like I drew my sword crossbody. Like I don't want to write all this stuff. You might just write he whipped his sword out and blocked it, right? Or just something very brief, right? So all the sentences should be very brief, and when you read through it, you should get a sense of the urgency of everything, right?
Yeah.
So it can't. So Steven did something like that with the shield wall, where it was confusing. I guess it could be confusing to the character, so maybe that's okay.
Yeah. I thought that was a really good point you made, because I think specifically the point about confusion and maybe even limiting the scope to what it would feel like in the moment. You're not seeing everything. I think some authors try to show us everything all at once.
Right.
And from a character's perspective, you're lost in the mayhem. That's I think the scene you were talking about is the Battle of the Bastards with Jon Snow when he gets so the horse, the ranks of horses meet. He's in the middle, and eventually he gets buried underneath. So he's barely clawing his way up for breath, and that's all you see. People are dying around him. There's agony and trauma, and all you're getting on screen is this little piece of visibility, and you feel like you're caught in there with him, barely able to breathe. And if I'm reading a scene like that, that's how I want to feel on the other side. I'm not going to get that if you give me a big panoramic, don't get me wrong, I love my Lord of the Rings, Rohan coming to the rescue of Gondor scenes. We all do.
Right.
But the way you write those, it's tricky if you try to zoom out like that.
Well, I like to write too, third person omniscient. So I will, as the narrator, you could start big, and then you could really zoom in on a character. So I could zoom in on my engineer character and be like, he got knocked down here. He's getting trampled. What is he going to do? Like, how is he going to deal with this afterwards? And that's another place where I think battles are really not well done. And I would say 95% of fiction, there's no trauma, like no trauma reaction to what they just went through, which is horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. So to not have that character, and I don't mean that you need to have chapters and chapters with the character breaking down and crying and starts drinking or something, but to bring up occasionally that character's thinking about it, or to have some sort of PTSD reaction to it. Where they're having a flashback, right? That to me is really a realistic way to write war and battles, and to show the living consequence of that, right?
Yeah, 100%. I wonder how this is the tough thing, the constant debate about when to start writing. I think it's great to build the experience as soon as possible to learn the skills. But there's some things that I don't know. I've seen some books written by younger people that are chock full of these sorts of details, and it amazes me that someone so young can capture something like that trauma so beautifully. But a lot of these things, until you've either gone through them or learned about them, you can tell when an author just hasn't even considered it, and it does show, it does weaken the story to not have the real consequences of as epic as these battles are, it has real, lasting, deep breaking consequences on your characters, and we need to see it.
Right, right. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I don't think like I've certainly had traumatic experiences as a firefighter, right? That
yeah,
I could say, yeah, I've experienced it firsthand. But I've also read a lot about wars, and I've listened to podcasts about wars and deep details about it. So that's something you could do even if you don't have that experience, and you
yeah,
can, so you should do that research if you're thinking about doing it because it's going to be a much more realistic experience, right?
yeah. Yeah, research, and that's the thing is if you do the research, you can make up for the lack of
Yeah,
experience, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know, which makes it tough.
yeah,
Speaking about knowing what you don't know, you want to play a game?
sure.
I was thinking about that.
I liked Steven's comment there. He started taking HEMA, right? So I did something
Mm,
similar when I was playing my character on the game. He had a recurve bow. So I was like, that sounds interesting. I went and bought a recurve bow and I taught myself how to shoot.
yeah.
What is HEMA?
I think it's like a medieval recreation group that actually does sword fighting and things like that.
Oh,
I
okay.
Yeah,
forget what it's called. I forget what it stands for.
yeah, I forget the
And you
acronym.
don't want me to make up the acronym because it'll be terrible.
Humans engaging
Mutual.
mutual affection.
Yeah.
We're gonna be here a long time.
He-Man eats monster automatons.
Mm.
Yeah, I could be there. Yeah, historic European martial
Oh,
arts
is
game.
that actually it? Oh, that's
Oh,
funny.
nice.
Okay,
Cool.
okay. I would never have known. Yeah, that's yeah, that would be fun. It would actually be a lot of fun to get
Yep.
some combat training to round out some of that writing. Just thinking for myself, I love looking into it. I love the research, but yeah, there's something about real world experience if you can to learn the skills and
Yep.
learn what it actually feels like in the moment.
Well,
Uh,
even like I got a recurve bow, and like that you have to string the bow, and that you shouldn't just leave it strung all the time on your back.
yeah,
I'm looking at you, Legolas, right? But like, so I have to have my character, unless he knows he's going into battle, then it's pre-strung, right? But like,
but it's elven magic.
if
So,
he's just walking around the ruins and he's exploring, he doesn't have his bow strung, so he's got to string that bow, and he might have people rushing him. So how do you string the bow under pressure, and can you do it? And you know, do you make a mistake, right? And then the person's closer to you now before you start firing arrows, right? So
yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. Yeah, that's a huge detail that so many depictions
mm.
of bows get wrong. Um,
That and weapons getting stuck, because if you're good at just hacking and slashing, like great, but um, when you stab a person
yeah,
in the chest, the ribs are gonna that person's collapsing and their ribs are gonna tear the weapon out of your hand.
yeah.
So I write that a lot. Like they lose their primary weapon and then they got to pull
Mm,
their secondary weapon out, right? So
Right.
things
love it.
like that. Like how is it really going to happen? You're not just waving a magic wand that just makes your enemies collapse, right?
Yeah. And that's one thing that Gladiator got right, back in the day. First, not second, first.
Yes.
That opening scene of his sword getting stuck because of the frost in the scabbard before Russell Crowe kills him.
Yep.
Beautiful. That was always an inspiration. I want some of that realism in
Yep.
my fight scenes. Makes it so much better.
I think the realism too, and like being in emergency services, the realism of injuries, the realism of like there's a lot of fires and stuff in battles, and fire, like I don't know if Alex is still on, but man, fire in movies and TV and books is so poorly written.
Mm,
People don't do any research on it, and being in fires is completely different than anything that you could imagine. Like you don't see
there.
anything. You're essentially just close your eyes
Yeah.
and crawl around on the floor, and that's it. That's what
So it's
you're
not like Toby
experiencing.
Maguire walking into a burning building to
I was
save
just about
the
to ask that.
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, we've got a bit of fun. Let's have a little fun to close this off. If you got a little time left,
sure.
um, I'm excited for this. Okay, so we have
Welcome.
smart questions with smart people.
I have to leave. Just kidding.
So I sat down. I thought of some really smart questions for you. So I want to pick your brain. I want to get down to the truth of reality with you, basically.
Okay.
All right, let's dive into question number one then.
So if my car had a Honey I Shrunk the Kids button to avoid traffic, how would it handle while tiny?
How
Would
would
it
the
be
car handle
normal?
or the
Yeah.
button?
No, the button works. It's a good button. Rick Moranis made it. I just want to know while my car is tiny and I'm driving it, does it feel like a normal car, or am I like extra
Are you
weighty?
tiny?
Or
Are
yeah,
you tiny?
everything in the car is tiny.
I recently saw there was I forget what channel did it, but there was a really good YouTube video on why nothing in your body would work if you shrunk down, because at a molecular level, nothing would fit anymore. Right? Like if you just think about your blood cells and how big your blood cells need to be, if you shrink them down to the size they would need to be, they wouldn't be able to carry oxygen anymore, and there's all
So
these different things.
I would press the button and just basically die.
Yeah, so you would die. You would just die instantly, right? So
But the
so
car handles well.
if you want to go,
I-
the car might handle well, but the combustion ratio might be a bit weird, because now you got air intake coming in and the fuel intake, and the particles screw everything up. The particle sizes are different. So is the combustion ratio correct? Alex says
Well,
depends on what kind of car. Yeah, it's true.
Love it.
So
Oh man.
yeah.
I
So
think I
told you these
think
are
engine.
I
smart
think
questions with smart people.
if everything was operating, it would handle somewhat similarly, but it also weighs a lot less, right?
Mhm.
So you could almost like flick it, like if another car hit it, you could flick it and it would just go flying and it would land. Because remember now, there's weird things going on, like the air molecules as it's going flying through the air are going to slow it down a lot faster. So you might have more difficult accelerating fast,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Extra
right?
turbulence.
Yeah, the molecular stuff is what a lot of people don't really think about. Yeah,
Yeah.
the wheel speed is determined by the circumference and how fast the tires are rotating, right? So, um, which it would be like you're going really slow. So you go like one car length after like several minutes go by. You'll have
So
stuff like that, and you got increased drag because the air molecules are not flowing around you as easily as they
so
were.
it wouldn't be a good idea to avoid traffic. I
Yeah, you
figured I
want
could go under the cars.
yeah, to avoid traffic. Yeah, it's true.
Hmm.
Well, it depends on how small you shrink. So like if you shrunk down to like maybe like so you could just fit under the car.
Okay.
I think you could just, and on an RC car speed, bypass traffic, but you wouldn't want to go too small.
Now I'm just picturing the scene from I think it was from Ocean's 11, or it
You
might
mean
be 12.
Italian Job?
No, it's definitely from one of the Ocean's movies. I think it's Ocean's 11 when you first see the two brothers, Casey Affleck and I forget the other actor.
Right. They're
And
racing the RC car.
yeah, Casey Affleck has his little remote car, and the other brother is driving his monster truck and just runs that little thing over.
I'm
while they're
thinking
racing.
of the Ghostbusters car, and yeah, and that would
Yeah.
have the same problem. Like the Ecto one is racing around, and this little drone car is keeping up with it. Like
Right.
Yeah.
that's a stretch. So,
So good.
but cool
All right.
movie.
Question
Cool.
2. Let's do it.
Question 2. So, can you make a net strong and big enough to catch a falling airplane?
Yes.
You can?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. How big would it have to
Everyone
be?
Well, that was easy.
everyone on it would be dead though.
There we go.
So it would be the opposite of a safety net. It'd be a death net.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make it
Yeah.
quick, right?
So you could make it out of like you probably don't even need too crazy materials, but you could certainly make it out of what is it called? Carbon nanotubes and stuff like that, right? But it might slice through the airplane. Maybe you could add some elements to the carbon nanotubes to catch it more, like soften.
Maybe you could put those fanoodles around the nanotubes to cushion it a little bit.
Yeah. The thing you want though is you want to slow that acceleration in a way that humans aboard the airplane are going to survive, right? Because it's the sudden stop.
So if we had a really big, strong, and stretchy net,
Stretchy net, yeah, is going to be key.
maybe dig a big hole so there's room for it to
Yeah.
bounce.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
we
those
didn't Oh, sorry.
Those devices that firefighters used to use with the trampoline, they'd all hold.
Right, yeah.
Those
In old
did
movies.
work. They did. People did live, but there was a certain height that if you fell from, you would not live. And I think it was like they were effective maybe up to 6 stories.
Okay. Yeah.
Alex could correct me if I'm wrong because he was a firefighter back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
So he's got a book question. He says,
Yeah. Why don't we get to that really quick before we get to the next?
"Ask your book question."
What is it, Alex?
This is your chance.
Yeah. And tell us about your 1800s firefighting experience.
Oh, that's good. All right. Well, while we're waiting for that,
Yeah, we'll get to that.
let's check the next one. There we go.
Okay. So if gravity was halved on the Earth, what would be the pros and cons of everyday life?
I think if and I'm on the spot for this, but I would be really worried immediately about water sloshing.
Water
Hmm.
sloshing.
It's not held by as much gravity to the Earth, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
does it slosh more
I
when
would
the moon's
imagine it
going around?
would. I would imagine. So like
So if you just pulled density out of the core and for some reason it didn't collapse the world
Yeah.
more, you just magically sent it to a different dimension. I'd be a little worried about that.
I think rivers would be weirder.
We'd all be Vegeta training. So,
Yep. For a very, we might be able to jump over it, but we'd only be jumping twice as high, which is not as exciting as it seems.
Yeah. That's a little
So.
bit exciting. That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
I
people who
wouldn't
can
say
really
no.
jump now will really be able to jump then.
Yep.
I wonder
Yeah.
how it'd be easier to fly things. So I think air travel to get a lot cheaper. I think we'd spend more time in space, wouldn't we?
Would it be easier to fly things? Because how does flying work? You're creating lift by, basically under a wing, ripping particles out, and you create a high pressure under the wing and a low pressure above, so you create that lift, right? So, but you need to go a lot faster if the atmosphere is thinner, which it would be if gravity was halved, because the atmosphere would suddenly go further away from the Earth, right? It wouldn't be held down as dense. Your atmospheric density would drop, and you might not be able to breathe. I'd have to do some research on that.
That was going to be my next
That's a little
comment. Was
terrifying.
just for breathing. Yeah.
Yeah, the oceans would rise for the same reason, right? Because it's not as compressed. You'd also get a lot of water vapor creation, right? So you get suddenly tons of fog, cloudy. You get more water vapor.
That's a little bit cool.
The air would become less dense. You might not be able to breathe as easily. You might not get enough oxygen. It wouldn't be good. It would be bad.
So
I'm increasingly thinking this is a bad idea.
Yeah, but you could jump twice as high. That's the pro. That's the pro. But,
yeah, no. I think I am going to pass. Thank you very much.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for joining us on Smart Questions for Smart People. We've learned that most of these ideas would just kill you.
So I'm also going to add my disclaimer, which I add as an engineer too. So I think those things might be correct, but do your own research.
Yes, before you have
you have the gravity.
Read about it first.
Because maybe it's a good idea and I'm wrong.
Okay.
So
terrible.
Always be open to being wrong.
Seems like a good way to go into these things.
Yeah, or else you're going to be wrong more.
Yeah,
if you're not open to being wrong.
All right, did we ever get that book question? I'm keeping an eye out for it. But I don't think.
No, I feel like he's.
I bet he's typing it out.
Yeah, it's either the longest question in the world, or he's just got us on the hook, thinking that there's going to be a book question.
We're going to stay here for another 20 minutes just waiting for it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex.
Yeah. I'll call him up afterwards and ask him what the book question is.
There we go. You send it to us.
When does your short story collection come out?
So I'm in the process. I'm editing the mystery story now. I got it back from my editor, and I'm doing the final edits on it. I'm about 65% of the way done, and then I actually have the covers done already. So I'll be doing a cover reveal It's really awesome. I can't wait to share it.
Very cool.
It's got Actaeon and Aethelgard on it, and they look really awesome. So oh, please show your covers again. So I'm looking forward to do that. So this here behind me is Dark Heart of Redemption, and this was done by Marcin Rubinkowski, who he did a lot of the concept art for. So I can't actually hire him anymore because he's so busy. He got so big as an artist. He did the concept art for Destiny 2, the video game,
Oh wow.
and Love, Death, and Robots, and a bunch of other things that I don't remember off the top of my head. So he got like really big, and I don't think he's doing much cover art anymore. So yeah, he did both of my covers. So they're very similar in style. Tied them both together with both of them having pyramid on it. You can see the silhouettes in the front of both, right? So this one just has Actaeon. If you read the prequel, that's it when Actaeon first arrives at Pyramid, and he's overlooking it. And then, so kind of comes up over a rise in the piles of rubble, and he sees Pyramid, and his life is going to change, right, as he goes there. And you'll see how if you read the book. And then Dark Heart, the silhouette is Actaeon and Cassandra. They're on a ship called the Glorious Redemption, and you'll notice, some of the sail stringers and stuff like that. The ropes, they're on fire, right?
Yeah.
And there's a battle taking place on the land. So.
Oh, those are those the gold? Those are lasers. Is that what we're seeing there, or no?
They're actually light lances, which are a type of artifact that they discover in the beginning of this book, and they repurpose them to. The light lances are pretty cool. They're fun to write about because they're beams of light that they could activate with panels. And I actually did research on it because I do a lot of optoelectrical work.
Yeah.
I did research on it. There are theories behind making a self-terminating beam of light that can cut things, right? So that could exist as a tool. So a lot of these things are tools, and these people are repurposing them as like war weapons and other things. So they discover this at the beginning of the book, and Actaeon thinks, well, maybe he leaves one of his associate engineers with it to try to work on it, and she finds that if you hold it for more than 30 seconds, it explodes. So that's like the big weakness to. I like giving things like a nice weakness. So if they have to count, and they want to have a factor of safety, so they count to 20, right, as they're fighting with it, and then if they go too long, they explode, which sometimes can be advantageous if you want to explode.
Fair.
Wink, wink.
As long as you can get away.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, this cover is actually kind of from a dramatic, one of the dramatic scenes in the story. And that book, that building there, which is also behind me, is Travail, which is the home of the Loresworn, which is a very secretive order that studies the artifacts, but they don't share it with anyone. So they keep it to themselves. So Actaeon wants to share it with people in a controlled manner for the good of humanity, and the Loresworn just kind of want to keep it to themselves. So this final, this kind of big battle takes place there, and the
rest you have to read to find out.
The rest you have to read to find out.
You gotta dive in and figure it out.
So those are the covers there. So yeah, I'm about 65% of the way through editing the mystery collection, and then I hope to send it off to the formatter. I'm hoping by the end of the summer, fingers crossed. We'll see how productive I am.
Do you have a title for it yet, or are you keeping it under wraps?
I could tell you here. So Artifacts and Enigmas.
Ooh, Artifacts and Enigmas.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, very nice.
So coming.
All right, you heard it first here, folks.
Near you.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, everyone, keep your ears and eyes open for that. Then that's going to be very cool. Yeah. I mean, like we were talking about, short stories are. I mean, I'm judging for a competition right now, and it's just all short stories. And I have to admit, it's a breath of fresh air. I'm increasingly looking for sources of something I can digest in one sitting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a really cool thing to do.
I think that'd be nice. Yeah, and I've actually enjoyed it. I've read some of my stories in progress to people, and you could actually sit down and read it in one sitting.
Yeah.
True.
So
Yeah.
it's a
Immediate
really nice thing.
feedback and
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Very fun.
yeah, I'm looking for. Hopefully, I could enter that competition. I saw you post about that, so I'm like, okay, cool.
Oh yeah,
Maybe.
writing. Yeah, writing. I mean, I recommend it. Yeah, they reached out to me a while ago, and we chatted back and forth. I think they saw a post I made, and
Yeah.
the more and then I looked into the competition itself, and being on the other side, on the judge side, I'm really impressed with how this is run. It's a very fun system. You
Awesome.
don't get
Yeah.
you don't get a huge amount of time to write, but and you're given prompts, and you have to use those, on the fly to make your story.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, and what comes out is a lot of fun. Is a lot of fun going through these stories and seeing how imaginative people are.
Nice.
And there's always funny ones too. There's some disasters and there's some really polished ones, some really creative ones, some very funny ones. I read one just the other day that was just pure innuendo all the way through. You
Mhm.
just never know what to expect. So, okay, is this it? Is this what we've been waiting for?
This is what we've been waiting for, maybe.
Ah,
How did I
perfect.
come up with it? So I think all of my cover art designs, all three of them so far, and soon to be a fourth, um, stick figures.
Hmm.
Um, I think I did that once on Twitter. I showed the stick figure sketch that I created next to the actual art.
Yeah, I love
Um,
doing that.
so I kind of had a concept in my head based on a scene, and wanted the artist to explore that, and
Yeah.
I sketched it out. Because I have a map for the book. Um, so I actually have I could show it quick. So
Yeah, there we go. Oh,
nice.
you
I
know what?
kind
Let me.
I kind of know where all the buildings and stuff are.
There we go.
Yeah. So I need to make sure, like, especially with this one, where is pyramid with respect to travail, and what are the,
Mm,
that's glass spire in the background, and there's some other there's some other buildings back there. Um, so I wanted to make sure everything was in the right place with respect to the map,
yeah.
and stuff like that. They're on a river called the River of Arches, and you can see some of the broken arches to my side, right? Broken artifact arches.
Mm,
So,
fair.
so
No,
all
very.
the
Maps are a whole other challenge. I really want to get one done for my books, but that's hopefully for the next one, if not the third. But yeah. Anyways, they're
yeah,
they're
my
so helpful though.
my map, I've got, actually, this is a better copy on my wall.
There we
So
go.
Nice. Yeah.
so I actually hand sketched this, and then what I kept telling myself to make myself feel better was, um, this is Actaeon's map in his
When
pocket.
that's
So,
good.
and he's not good at drawing maps.
I love it. I love
So
it.
so that's my map of just everything going on with little arrows and his notes, right?
Yeah,
So
that's a good workaround. I love it.
yeah, so I
And
like that
universe map.
approach. So if somebody goes, "Why does your map suck?" It's not my map. It's
No,
Actaeon's map.
that's so good.
Yeah.
That's smart. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. Well, before we call it a night, anything else you want to let everyone know? I've posted your links underneath on YouTube, so they can follow you,
Thanks.
on Twitter. You're on YouTube, Facebook. Yeah, where what do you want people to know? Where can they find you?
Yeah, mostly, if people ask me questions on Twitter or on that Facebook group, I get notifications. I'm always happy to hear from readers. If you want to read my book and just tweet at me with what's going on or send me DMs, I'm happy about it. I love interacting with readers. That's
Yeah,
some of the best experiences I've had, is when people read the books and want to almost like live chat with me about it.
yeah.
Actually, one of the coolest things I had is a group of guys, including Andrew from Wizardly Reads,
Mm.
formed a book club, and then it was Raoul Reads at the time. I don't know if you knew him, but they formed a book club, and then they read the book, and
Yeah,
met
like
with
a
me after
buddy
they
read.
read the book.
They did a buddy read of it.
Yeah, so it was really
Yeah.
cool, and it was actually interesting. Andrew didn't love The Engineer. He was like, I don't really like it. Parts of it didn't resonate with me. And then told me months later, he was like, I can't stop thinking about your book, which was interesting. It was like, he actually, I think he gave it like 3 stars initially, and then I think he added on another star because it couldn't leave his head. I was like, well,
That's
really
funny.
interesting feedback. And he's one
Yeah.
of the people that picked my second book up and read it, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, pretty cool. But it was really interesting and an experience you don't get a lot, to like just really sit down for an hour and talk to people that read your book and hear, what did you like, what did you not like, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
That's a
that's a
lot of
lot of
fun.
fun. So I love hearing that. It doesn't mean I'm going to change the book, because it's out, it's done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it does mean I can think about that feedback for the next book, right?
Yeah.
I think some people send me messages and they're like, we want you to change this book. It's like, it's done already.
Yeah, that's not
It's
happening.
not changed. I had one reviewer wanted me to split it in 2 books, and I was like, it's not happening. I'm not doing that now. It's
Yeah.
out. There's ISBNs for it. It's not. I'm on to the next project.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just interacting with readers. Don't be afraid to reach out. I love that. I love seeing that. And then the other thing I wanted to say, is my wife, who created, this universe behind me, and created this awesome game that I met her on and changed my life. She wrote her own short story, or not short story. She wrote her own novel, and she's working on that. And it's a sci-fi novel, so keep a lookout for that. And I think it's an amazing novel. So I'm really looking forward to share that. You'll see me put that up on social media when it's out.
We'll
Yes,
watch
people
it.
do have some weird asks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Comes with the territory. I mean, part of me is just excited they're reading, but sometimes they demand you do something.
Yep.
What can you do? It's too late. Sometimes you disagree, and other
Yeah.
times, I'll do it in the next book. That's sometimes all you can do.
I've always told people, be open to all criticism,
Yeah.
but don't be afraid to disagree with it after
Yeah.
you've thought about it. Always think
Right.
about it,
Yeah.
and then don't be afraid to just say, yeah, I thought about that a little bit. I'm not going to do that, but they,
Yeah.
So
Give it some time to breathe, and then
Yeah.
make your decision.
because I think a lot of people are just very closed to criticism, and they don't hear things
Mhm.
that could really help them out. And
Yeah.
that goes for everything, right? Not just
Yeah.
writing, just every single thing you could do.
Yeah. Very, very true. Oh, there's some good words of wisdom to end on.
Great
Yeah, well,
show. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for writing stories and saving lives. What an amazing thing you do.
that is a pretty killer combination right there.
Happy
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Well,
having me on.
thanks so
Appreciate
much
it.
for coming. And yeah, like I said, everyone, check the links below. Follow Darran everywhere you can. Like and subscribe us on YouTube. And if you were here on X or Facebook, thanks. And yeah, we will see you next time. Next week, actually, with E.L. Montague. So that's something
That's
to look forward to.
right.
Yeah. So very much looking forward to finally talking to E.L. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And thank you,
That's your
Darran.
second EL that you'll have on.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes it's hard to follow all the acronyms, but exactly.
Yes.
All right. Cheers, everyone. All the initials. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. I'm going to click end stream. We will wave off.